It's time to take a trip down memory lane to talk about the weird narrative that was pushed forward with the advent of Nintendo Switch, with the Nintendo Switch Online subscription, and how people, right from the get go, were trying to tell you that the service didn't have value, that everybody owned these games already, that people really wanted to buy these games if they didn't. Right? Like, Nintendo Switch Online was always, right from the get go, mocked and derided by some of the biggest frauds in the gaming industry, including individuals like Video Game Awesome and the gaming community at large, right? People hated Nintendo Switch Online. They spoke out about it. They called it the worst online service ever. They tried to say it was a bad deal. And of course, that was not the case. Like, Nintendo very quickly proved that Nintendo Switch Online was the definitive gaming related subscription service, right? They really made it worth its value. They regularly update this thing with new games, right? We recently got classics like Banjo Tooie, Turok 2, and Shadow Man, right? Like, lots of really cool stuff on that service. So people whine and cry and moan about this, right? They really try to, but we're at the point now where Nintendo is demonstrating what they're going to do with their online subscription service. What they are doing now is that they are expanding outside of video games. So what that means is that, like, the online service ties into the hardware, it ties into Alarmo, it ties into things, other things they do, Nintendo Music, right? Nintendo is clearly branching out outside the realm of video games when it comes to this online subscription. And this is a really interesting thing because it showcases something that I think a lot of people are not really willing to admit. This idea that there is this very pervasive narrative among the population, is that once this generation is over, once the Switch is done, Nintendo will never ever be able to recapture that success. They'll never ever be relevant again. Nobody will ever buy from Nintendo after the Switch because PS5 is just so much better. It has GTA 5, GTA 6, right? Like, Nintendo can't win. Like, again, this is the stuff we've been hearing since the 90s, right? The N64. But with the advent of Nintendo Switch Online, it's all the industry can do to keep those narratives about the N64 and the GameCube rolling, right? Like, trying to gaslight people into thinking the N64 had no games, or that the GameCube was for kids, or that the Wii was casual, or that the Wii U was a failure, right? All of them are trying to deflect from the fact that Nintendo has consistently won every console generation since the NES, right? These same people love to do this thing where they pretend the handhelds don't exist. They love to pretend the Wii wasn't revolutionary. Even right now, they're trying to deny that the Switch is a massive success. And what's more, Nintendo is now showcasing that they can succeed outside of traditional gaming hardware. So what this means now is that you can't simply point at, like, declining console sales or lower than expected game sales and try and gaslight people into thinking Nintendo is failing like you used to, right? Now you have to contend with all their alternative sources of income. You have to contend with the films. You have to contend with, like, the Alarmo, and you have to contend with the existence of the subscription service, which ties into things outside of the Nintendo Switch ecosystem, which means Nintendo President Shigeru Furukawa has already talked about this. The Nintendo subscription is going to carry over onto the next piece of hardware, right? So what that means is that if you're subscribed to Nintendo, you're going to be invested in their ecosystem, and you are going to have an incentive to upgrade no matter what. And I do think this is an element that people aren't taking into consideration when it comes to what Nintendo is doing Like they really do seem to have this mindset that like when the Switch is over, that's going to be it, and that like there's going to be a massive drop off. It's when the next console comes out, it isn't going to happen. I think it's safe to say that like after all these huge numbers, the rising popularity of a lot of other B-ranked Nintendo properties, stuff like Splatoon, stuff like Animal Crossing, Fire Emblem, stuff like that. After the monumental success of the Switch, there isn't going to be downplaying any of these future Nintendo games, right? You can't even really downplay the games that are coming out now, right? Just look at like what happened with Pokemon, right? We were told that the IP was on a massive decline. We were told that Pokemon was failing, that like fans were upset, and that there was this big like fan backlash. Scarlet and Violet outsold Elden Ring, right? Scarlet and Violet were hugely successful. I've been buying trading cards, right? I've been getting into Pokemon cards. You have like the widely successful app. You have the anime. You have the merchandise, right? You're not going to dismantle the Pokemon IP. Right? Anybody who seriously tried to argue that Palworld would be competitive with Pokemon was completely delusional, right? Like, oh, but they have merchandise though. Like, it's not going to be as popular as a real Pokemon, right? Palworld is like the equivalent of those stupid shovelware like bargain bin movies that like knock off of like public domain like Disney products, right? Where you just give it a similar name and hope like stupid parents who don't know any better buy it for their kids, right? It's like that, right? It's like just shovelware bargain bin trash that's derivative of a more popular brand. It's not really competitive. And I think more and more we're seeing that kind of behavior, from other companies in regard to Nintendo properties, right? We see this with people spurging out about Fire Emblem, about Splatoon, about like, Splatoon had its own copycat, right? In Foam Stars, right? We've seen people knock off Mario with Astrobot, right? We've seen like, the constant, never-ending attempts by the industry to gaslight you into thinking Zelda is worse than Okami, than Darksiders, than Dark Souls, than Skyrim. Like every year, it feels like Horizon Zero Dawn, right? Like every year, it feels like another Zelda killer comes out only to be completely forgotten. Like we are in the midst of Nintendo becoming extraordinarily mainstream, where we can't just pretend it's like a fanboy thing or it's only popular with kids or whatever people tried to cope like back in the day. Like no, Nintendo is a universally popular, beloved brand, and we are going to see that going forward to the point where like I honestly expect Nintendo to eclipse Marvel in relevancy, right? The games are going to be extraordinarily high quality as Nintendo puts out those very, very high quality Nintendo films, right? We are going to see merchandise be more popular, right? We're going to see like no-name superheroes like Actually, Mario is already bigger than Spider-Man. This is something that like people didn't really talk about, but we're already at that point where Mario is bigger than established icons like Mickey Mouse or Spider-Man or whoever like people like to prop up as just the example of like the what the kids are into, right? Like again, we are in this position where all of these like beloved icons of yesteryear are just falling before Nintendo, right? Right now we're going up against like D&D with the whole Baldur's Gate 3 thing. And that's gonna blow up in its face. I had so many people try to tell me that, like, well, the D&D movie was good, but the Zelda movie is going to be better, and it's gonna pull in more money. So, like, again, it's only a matter of time until Zelda eclipses, Lord of the Rings, Narnia, Harry Potter in relevancy as like being like the premier fantasy thing, like purely because it's endlessly it can continue indefinitely and continue to get new and new films that constantly raise the stakes and like explore different avenues, right? There's so much that you can do with the Zelda IP, just like there's so much you can do with the Mario IP and like every other like category in Nintendo films, right? You are going to see way more variety and versatility in Nintendo movies than you ever did with the MCU. right? It's going to be a complete and objective blowout quality wise. And we are going to continue seeing high quality games on top of that, right? Like it is going to be amazing. And I do think that like people aren't prepared for how successful the company is going to be in the next several years. Alarmo is just the beginning. I am certain we are going to get other products like it in the next decade or so. Like we are going to see a lot more of these products make their way into homes and become mainstays, right? This is the complete and total Nintendo takeover. The stuff that like Marvel and From Slop could never even hope to match, right? It is going to be amazing. And what's going to be even more incredible is seeing how people cope and seethe about this, right? The success of the Nintendo Switch online service is going to eclipse PC gaming. It's going to overtake mobile gaming. It's going to be like this own ecosystem outside of the realms of constrained by any kind of hardware, right? It is going to be beyond what PC gaming can accomplish. It is going to be beyond what mobile can accomplish. Nintendo just has successfully grown to the point where they are going to be uh, a multi this incredibly huge tech conglomerate. They are going to produce high quality products and deliver every single time. Alarmo is just the beginning of what's to come.